You could say that I was one of those big Pokemon fans as a kid. I'd first gotten into the fandom by the age of 10. My siblings and I watched the anime every chance we got. We bought a few of the toys along with trading cards, and even saw each Pokemon movie when we had the chance to see it. It wasn't until the Christmas of 1999, the year my siblings and I became fans, that we each got a Pokemon game. My sister got Pokemon Blue, my brother Pokemon Red, and I got Pokemon Yellow. The more we played our Pokemon, the more fascinated we became with the franchise. Eventually, we started getting more and more Pokemon games as we got newer consoles. By the time I got to Pokemon Ruby in 2005, I got all 8 badges. I started having trouble finding the Pokemon League, due to my frustration of not only trying to find something but also trying to catch them all. I lost interest in the Pokemon video games. Since then, I'd not played any of my Pokemon games. Flash forward to October 2010. I was cruising through DeviantArt when I came across a fan art of a strange type of story called Lost Silver. Out of curiosity, I had to read the story and watched the accompanying fan-made video. I had unfortunately made the mistake of watching and reading them really late at night. However, as time went by, I became more and more fascinated by these stories of video game playing gone horribly wrong. Stories simply known as creepypastas. Because of the creepypastas, I had found myself digging out my copy of Pokemon Yellow and my yellow Game Boy and playing the game once again. It felt quite strange yet amazing to play a game I once loved again. By the time that Pokemon Black and White had been announced, I was pretty excited. However, for some unknown reason, I had the urge to get Pokemon Soul Silver instead. I managed to get the game after my 2011 spring semester at college had ended, and I played it to my heart's content. Due to my long hours of gameplay, I managed to catch quite a handful of Pokemon. True, it wasn't every single Pokemon that could be caught in the game, but I caught enough to make me happy. Heck, I'd even caught Lugia before going off to the Indigo Plateau to face the Elite Four. But when I was going through Victory Road, something happened that I didn't expect. A Pokemon attack. But how was that possible? I'd used a max repel so I wouldn't have to deal with any wild Pokemon. Nevertheless, I was ready to make my move and flee the battle, until something caught my eye. The wild Pokemon was no ordinary Pokemon. It was a Gengar. A 56 level Gengar. I didn't know how it was possible because I knew for a fact that Gengar could not be caught regularly like its pre-evolved forms Ghastly and Horner, let alone a level 56. But right now, none of that mattered. I wasn't going to miss out on this golden opportunity to catch a Pokemon that could not be caught regularly. Thus, I brought out my Typhlosion, who I'd nicknamed Flame when I first got him as a Cyndaquil early in the game. But trying to catch the Gengar was a pain in the neck for me. Luckily, I'd managed to get his health down far enough for me to use Dusk Ball on him. Totally on edge, I watched as the Dusk Ball rocked back and forth 3 times before the click sound was made. I could only stare in shock and disbelief at the thought that I had caught a Gengar, one of my most favourite of Pokemon. Because of my little success, I started screaming like a madman out of joy and victory. Once I got through the whole Pokédex nonsense, I was asked if I wanted to give Gengar a nickname. With a smile, I'd settled on dubbing Gengar with the nickname of Nightmare. How I'd come to deciding that nickname, I wasn't sure. All I know is that it sounded awesome. From that point on, I had Nightmare on my team, and he was a worthy Pokemon to have. With his help, not only had I managed to defeat the Elite Four and the Champion Lance in one go, but I'd also defeated all the Kanto gym leaders, caught Ho along with Entei, Suicune and Raikou, and I even defeated Red, all on my first tries. But as time had gone by, I slowly started to play Soul Silver less and less, for I had bigger problems to deal with in the real world. My grandmother's health was declining. It wasn't until she passed away in a battle from cancer that I'd fallen into a Great Depression. Since then, I'd stopped playing Soul Silver for what seemed like ages. It wasn't until the week before my first day of the fall semester that I was looking through my DS games and I came across Soul Silver. Just then, it dawned on me that I had not played the game since my younger brother's high school graduation. Luckily, in the past few months that I had not played the game, I had bought a 3DS so I could play my DS games without having to find my brother to play on his DS. So for my sake, I decided it was time to play Soul Silver and check up on my team. Little did I know, was that things would not be the same. The game started normally, but when I loaded the game, things started to seem off. I recall when I last saved the game, I was at the Pokemon Center at the base of Mount Silver, where I was going to fight against Red again. However, the usual Pokemon Center music wasn't playing. In fact, there wasn't any music playing at all, just dead silence. What's more was that everything seemed literally darker, as the lighting seemed fully as if to give that feeling like the lights were flickering on and off. Wondering what the hell was going on, I checked my Pokemon team to make sure they were still intact. Luckily, I had all my Pokemon still. Flame, my nickname for my Typhlosion, Sparky the Pikachu, Radeon, Lucario, Lugia, and... hey, that was strange. I couldn't find Nightmare on my team anywhere. Where could he possibly be? Shoving that thought aside, I closed my Pokemon team and walked out of the Pokemon Center with Flame following close behind me. Just as I exited and I was outside, a text box opened saying, "Ethan, there you are." At the sound of that, a question mark and a speech bubble appeared over my character. Before I knew it, the character sprite of Lyra came rushing up to my character urgently. Somehow I could feel her fear as she spoke with the message. I found Ryan. He's badly injured. You have to come see." Before anything else could be said or done, I found Lyra leading my character over to the entrance of Mount Silver. There, much to my shock and horror, was the body of the game rival Silver, or as I called him, Ryan. He was lying on the ground with a bit of red underneath him, most likely representing a puddle of blood. I made my character approach Ryan and click the A button, and Ryan spoke. "Ethan, is it really you? I was attacked by a Gengar. After he attacked me, he said something about finding some guy named Red. Here, take this." The next dialogue box that came up read, Ryan gave Ethan the crucifix. Ethan placed the crucifix in the key items pocket. Once that was done, Ryan spoke once more. "Ethan, you have to stop him before it was too late." After I clicked the A upon finishing the text, I clicked the button again and another text box came out. Ryan drew his last breath and died. The only thing I could do was gasp in horror. This couldn't be real at all. A Gengar? He couldn't have meant my Gengar. Nightmare, right? Shaking that off, I made Ethan approach the entrance of Mount Silver before I was stopped as Lyra approached me. "Hang on, Ethan. You can't go alone. That Gengar might make you suffer the same fate as Ryan did, so I'm going with you." It was then that I was given the usual choice of answer, yes or no. Coming to terms that this new story arc of the game was like no other, I decided that I would most likely need her help. Thus, I clicked the yes option. "Okay, let's go," Lyra said in response. And with that, my character, with Flame and Lyra following, entered the cave. Upon entering, a text box came up. "Welcome, friends. Come meet me up at the peak of the mountain. I've been expecting you." By now, I was starting to feel slightly disturbed. Nevertheless, I made Lugia use Flash, and my character along with Flame and Lyra navigated through the mountain all the way up to the top. The further up we went, the more sprites of dead bodies I saw of Pokemon and humans, which make my stomach churn more and more. Eventually, we made it up to the peak and walked along the snowy trail, until we reached the end of the path where Red normally stood. However, Red wasn't standing in his usual spot. Instead, it looked like the sprite of a Gengar, its back turned towards my character. I was only a few steps away from the Gengar when Ethan and Lyra were both stopped. "So, you finally decided to show up after all this time, have you? Well, it's about time. I've been waiting for you." When I pressed A, the Gengar turned to face Ethan and Lyra. "It's been way too long, Ethan. Or would you prefer that I call you by your real name, Ben?" Reading that almost made my heart stop. Nightmare couldn't have known my real name. It had to be just a game, right? That's all Pokemon is, really. A video game. They never had this kind of knowledge of their players, and they never normally broke the fourth wall. The only time that Pokemon broke the fourth wall was during the movies, and that was by Team Rocket, Jesse James and Meowth. Nervously, I turned back to my 3DS as I clicked A. Lyra turned to look at me as she spoke. "Ethan, what is he talking about?" "Ah, so you haven't told her? Well, Benny boy, now's your chance to prove yourself," Nightmare said, approaching us. "Prove that you haven't lost your touch as a Pokemon trainer." I was given the usual yes-no choice at the sound of that. Seeing my choices, I frowned and clicked no. As I did so, I said aloud, "I'd rather not." I was hoping that Gengar would not attack then. But how did he reply? "You don't have a choice, Ben. We fight right here, right now." With that, Nightmare approached my character and the battle began. Nightmare stood on one side of the screen, while Ethan and Lyra stood on the other, leaving me to realize that Lyra was going to fight too. Suddenly, I noticed something completely different about Nightmare. He looked nothing like the Gengar I caught back on Victory Road now. His fur color was a darker shade of purple, almost completely black. Plus there was a notch missing from his right ear, and he had a long red scar going vertically across his right eye, which looked more like a blind eye now. And I then noticed something in his right hand. I took a close look to see it was a severed head. But it was no ordinary severed head. It was a red severed head. Shaking that off, I clicked the A button. Almost immediately, Ethan sent Flame into battle while Lyra sent out a Marill. Once that was done, Nightmare spoke. "Really, Ben? I was sure you were better than that. Fighting with 2 Pokemon against 1? I only frowned at reading that. The idea of a video game character scolding me just annoyed me. After all, it was only a video game. That's what I kept reminding myself as I played the game. Choosing Flame's attack, Fire Blast. Luckily, I was the first to attack and it took a critical hit on Nightmare, taking down half of his health. I wasn't sure how that was possible, seeing that Flame was only a level 63 and Nightmare was a level 75. It was after that hit that another dialogue box popped up. "Impressive, Ben. Most impressive." My turn. I obviously knew that those were Nightmare's words, commenting on Flame's powerful attack. Suddenly, the sinister looking Gengar made his move by throwing a Shadow Ball at Marill. Given Marill's level of 57, I'd expected Nightmare's attack to take out most of Marill's health until it was really low in the red. Luckily, Marill managed to counter with a Hydro Pump, bringing down Nightmare's health by a bit. To finish it off, I commanded Flame to use Flame Wheel, which depleted Nightmare's health completely. Despite this, Nightmare didn't sink from the battle screen. Instead, a text box popped up, Nightmare saying, "Well, looks like you haven't lost your touch despite your hiatus." Immediately, the game faded back to the overworld. For some reason, even though Lyra and I had defeated the Gengar that used to be mine, I had a strong feeling that the battle seemed too simple. Just then, Nightmare said, "Good job, Ben. You're still as good of a trainer since you and I defeated that so-called Pokemon Master everyone was referring to as Red. What do you say we have a rematch?" At that question, I was given the usual yes-no choice. I had thought it over for half a minute then nodded as I clicked A on the yes option. Once I made my answer, Nightmare said, "Excellent. Meet me at the Ghost Tower in Lavender Town tonight at midnight. Don't be late." The screen faded to black and back to the mountain, revealing that Nightmare had left Ethan, Lyra and Flame all alone at the peak. I could only feel slightly nervous about what could happen later on in the game. I was startled from my game when my mum came into my room. She had said that she and my dad and brothers were going out and about and wanted to know if I wanted to come along. With only my rematch with Nightmare on the brain, I nodded and agreed, turning off my 3DS for now. For the rest of the day, my family and I went to a few stores. I saw a movie, even had dinner at Max and Ruby's. We managed to get home around 10:30 at night. By around 11:55, my parents and my youngest brother were asleep, although my second youngest brother was still awake and playing his games on the PlayStation 3 downstairs. Up until then, I was chatting with a friend of mine on AIM, telling him about my recently shocking experience with Soul Silver. At first he thought I was crazy and that I was telling some sort of short story, but as the discussion went on, he started to believe me. For a brief second, I looked up from my laptop to the clock, which now read 11:58. My eyes travelled to my lone 3DS, remembering the deal I had made with Nightmare and Soul Silver. However, I asked myself if I was willing to risk my sanity over a simple DS game. I didn't keep my promise though. There was no telling what would happen. Nodding to myself, I made up my mind. I told my friend Naeem that I'd be right back, closed my laptop, picked up my 3DS, turned it on and started Soul Silver. When I loaded my game, I found Ethan and Lyra with Flame following in Lavender Town as they approached the Pokemon Tower. If you recall how the town's theme in Gold and Silver, let alone Heart Gold and Soul Silver, seemed calmer and more soothing, that tone was not present in the game. Instead, the tone was more like that of the original Pokemon games, only remixed for Soul Silver, giving the song that creepy ambience it once had. Honestly, I'd always hated the original tone of Lavender Town theme. It was just nightmare-inducing. I shoved that thought aside as Ethan and Lyra stopped at the tower's doors and they turned to one another. "Something about this seems off, Ethan. Are you sure you want to go through with this?" she asked my character, giving the yes/no option. I only nodded as I clicked yes. With that, I regained control of the game and walked the three into the doors. Instead of finding the characters inside what would look like a radio tower lobby, instead the lobby was big and bare, like it was normally in the earlier games before Gold and Silver. As the Lavender Town theme continued, I started to feel even more freaked out because spooky songs didn't agree with me late at night. I decided to switch the music on my radio, but when I went to check it, I saw that I had no radio. Immediately I shook that off and trekked up the tower with Lyra and Flame following my character. Eventually, we reached the top of the tower, entirely looking like a Heart Gold Soul Silver remaster of the Pokemon Ghost Tower. We continued walking until we saw Nightmare waiting by the tombstone. As we approached him, the Gengar sprite turned to face us before a dialogue box popped up. Well, you actually managed to show up then. I was beginning to think that you'd chicken out and be halfway to Sinnoh by now. Lyra took her turn to speak. Like we had a choice. Well, either way, we finished this now. Nightmare approached our sprites. "It's payback time, Benny." And just like that, the battle commenced. As the battle started, the music changed to what sounded like the Saw theme. Hello Zep, except remixed in a way that would make it sound like it was made for a Pokemon game. I didn't know how that song managed to find its way into the game, but I decided that it didn't matter right now. Pushing that aside, I looked at Nightmare's level to see that, much to my shock, he was now at level 666, which I clearly knew as a number associated with the devil. Nevertheless, Lyra and I sent out our Pokemon, even if I knew neither of us stood a chance against Nightmare, hence his high level. Luckily, Flame and Lyra's Marill managed to go first, but they barely made any damage on the ghost Pokemon. One by one, Nightmare wiped out all of our Pokemon. Much to my surprise, every time the Pokemon fainted, it said that they died instead of fainted. I obviously knew that Pokemon couldn't die, but apparently this game thinks that that actually applies. As soon as all of our Pokemon were dead, Nightmare spoke. "Oh dear, it seems I killed all of Benny and his poor little girlfriend's stupid little friends," Nightmare said as a way of taunting me. "Now it's time to die." I gulped, knowing that Nightmare would kill both Ethan and Lyra, whom had slid onto the battle screen before Nightmare had even spoken. Much to my confusion, I saw that I was still in battle. Instead of the word attack though, I saw the word sand. Since I had no other options, I chose sand and read the outcome. Ethan threw sand at Nightmare. After that, I was treated with the animation of Ethan making a tossing gesture, followed by the sand attack animation. Needless to say, that made Nightmare's sprite shake as he spoke. "Ah, my eyes!" Instantly, the game returned to the overworld as Nightmare's sprite hopped up and down, a speech bubble appearing over his head with angry emoticons inside of it. That only meant that in my little victory, I'd only enraged the Gengar. "You good-for-nothing cheating boy," Nightmare said through the text box. Ethan and Lyra turned to another. "Lyra, run for it, Ethan!" Almost immediately, the sprites of the two kids ran away from Nightmare, out of the burial ground and out of the Pokemon Tower. Once outside, the two kids stopped and turned to one another. "Lyra, Nightmare's not going to be picking sand from his eyes forever, Ethan. Run as fast as you can and don't look back. With that, Lyra ran off screen before I regained control of Ethan. Immediately, I rummaged through my items bag and chose the bicycle. This had made Ethan board his bike before I guided him northward from Lavender Town. Before I could exit the town though, I was interrupted abruptly from control as another text box popped up. Nightmare. Where are you, Benjamin? Come back and face me, you selfish, cowardly brat! After closing the text box, I was given another one, with a different message. Nightmare's catching up to you. Better hurry. I took no second thoughts and guided Ethan as far away from Lavender Town as I could. After minutes and minutes of getting away from the ghost-inhabited town, I eventually found Ethan stopped at a cliff. The camera panned down, revealing water lapping with sharp rocks at the bottom, before it panned back to Ethan facing downwards before. Nightmare. Peekaboo! A speech bubble with an exclamation point inside appeared above Ethan before he turned around, just as Nightmare arrived. Seeing him made my blood run cold. Immediately, another text box came up as the Gengar spoke. Go on, Benjamin. Jump from the cliff. Kill yourself. It's the only way out. I was suddenly given the usual yes-no option. Frowning, I chose no. Nightmare's response? You got guts, punk. You'd rather die at my hands? The hands of your former companion? Nightmare's sprite took one step towards Ethan's. Tell me, Ben. Do you still care about me? Again, I was given the yes-no option. I spoke aloud. Of course I do, Nightmare. You're one of my best Pokemon friends. As I said so, I chose yes, hoping that that would do something good. However, Nightmare approached Ethan, bumping him and causing him to jump back once as a way of hitting him. Nightmare. Spare me your lies, Ben. You've forgotten about me. And for what? Your stupid brother's graduation? Your grandmother's death? The old hag deserved to die. She shouldn't mean anything to you. Reading that made me both insulted and horrified. Insulted because I knew that my grandmother did not deserve to die. Horrified because I did not know how the game could know about that. Up until this point, I kept convincing myself that it was nothing more than a game. Sadly, I knew that it would not do me any good right now, seeing that Nightmare obviously knew more about me than a game character should. Nightmare. Now, prepare to die. Immediately, Nightmare and I went into battle. For Ethan's attacks, he now had punch, kick, struggle and sand. Unfortunately, each time I chose the former three, I was given the same response. It doesn't affect Nightmare, and when I tried sand, the text box read, Nightmare avoided the attack. Much to my dismay, Nightmare managed to bring down Ethan's health until it was in the red before he spoke. Nightmare. This is it, Ben. Say goodbye. Out of options, I looked to my items option, looking through every item I had in the bag until I came to key items. There I saw my only item, the crucifix that Ryan gave me. With no other choices, I clicked on the crucifix, clicked use and held my breath. Ethan did his toss animation as the item, a crucifix, flew right at Nightmare. Surprisingly, Nightmare's health depleted completely until it was empty before another text box came up. Impossible! How did you... The dialogue cut off there before Nightmare sank from the screen as these words came up from the text box. Nightmare died. With the battle over, the game once again came back into the overworld. Ethan stood there, Nightmare's sprite now laying before him. I swear, I will get you, Benjamin. Nightmare lets out his last breath before he shuts his eyes. I could only sigh in relief knowing that I'd just defeated my demon. Lyra's sprite then arrived, coming up to Ethan. Ethan, I followed Nightmare here as fast as I could. I was scared that he might have killed you. Are you alright? As if I was expecting it, the yes-no option came up. Smiling, I clicked yes as I nodded. With that, another text box popped up. Much to my surprise, this time the dialogue seemed to be spoken by... Ethan. Yeah, I'm okay, Lyra. It's finished now. Nightmare's reign of terror is over. it's finally over. His sprite turned to look southward. Ethan. Ben, thank you very much. We'll never forget you. Lyra came up next to Ethan. Lyra. Thanks a bunch, Ben. I only smiled a sad smile as the screen faded into the credits. Knowing that I'd managed to help the main character survive his battle, and yet I was sad that it all cost him and Lyra their Pokemon teams. As the credits rolled, a different tune played. A tune that sounded like Evanescence's Hello, remixed to be played in a Pokemon game. I opened my computer to talk to my friend, remembering that I'd chat with him. Before we got too far into our conversation, I heard another sound from my 3DS. It sounded like Lavender Town's theme, except it was slowing down. I looked at the two screens. On the top one was a pair of glowing red eyes, the right one looking a bit blind. But then I saw the bottom screen, showing some text, and it read this. You think you've defeated me for good? That you're at peace? But you don't know anything. The top screen reveals what the red eyes belong to. A Gengar, darker in colour than any other Gengar, with a jagged scar across his eye. It then hit me. It was Nightmare. I wouldn't celebrate so soon, Benjamin. For as long as you live and breathe, I will haunt you and those you love. As I read that, both screens faded to black before fading to the opening titles of the game. The only thing I could do though was stare at the screen, Nightmare's words echoing through my mind. I checked to see if my save file was still there, but there was no continue option, only new game and options. I only sighed in relief as I turned off my 3DS, no longer caring if I had to start my game over. Before I closed my 3DS to put it away, something caught my eye in the reflection of the top flap of the game system. A pair of glowing red eyes, behind me. Out of panic, I turned my head quickly to see what the red eyes belonged to. However, nothing was behind me. Was I hallucinating? I only shook my head, putting my 3DS away. Sadly, I couldn't shake off the feeling of fear that Nightmare's words had given me. Later that night, I placed on my crucifix necklace before going to bed, knowing that the crucifix in the glitched up version of my Soul Silver game had saved Ethan's life. Plus, it helped me feel slightly safer. Ever since that night, I wore my necklace as a way of protecting myself. But at what cost? Each and every night, I had the dark feeling that no matter what, someone or something was in the dark, waiting for the chance to strike.